I'm not just a waitress, Charlotte said, her voice soft yet piercing, the kind of calm that demanded attention. The billionaire sitting before her glanced up from his phone, his sharp eyes scanning her face for a moment before he let out a small laugh. You? A waitress? What could you possibly know about anything beyond carrying orders? He leaned back in his chair, a smug smile playing on his lips. Charlotte didn't flinch. She simply set the water glass in front of him, her movements fluid and graceful. She had been here before. Being underestimated was nothing new. But this time, things were different. She wasn't just a waitress, and she wasn't about to let him get away with it. Her shift at the Azure Room had been uneventful until he walked in. Sebastian Moore, the CEO of Moore Enterprises and one of the wealthiest men in the country. Charlotte had heard his name whispered among the staff, but to her, he was just another arrogant man with a mountain of money and an inflated ego. His reputation preceded him, ruthless in business, known for making decisions that impacted entire industries, and for having little patience for anything that didn't revolve around him. What can I get you? Charlotte asked, her tone professional, but there was a flicker of something deeper in her eyes. Sebastian barely looked up. Something with a little more excitement, he muttered, his eyes still glued to his phone. You must be bored out of your mind, huh? Waiting on people like me. Charlotte didn't respond right away. Instead, she took a mental step back. She'd heard it all before, the jokes about waitstaff, the snide remarks about their intelligence. But Charlotte wasn't just any server. She had worked her way through college, earning a degree in finance before life had forced her to put it all on hold. She'd made a promise to herself that one day, she would return to the world of numbers, of strategies, and investments. But today wasn't the day for that. Not yet. If you're looking for excitement, I might be able to help with that, she said finally, her voice steady, no trace of sarcasm or annoyance. Sebastian didn't even bother to look up. Sure, sweetheart. Give me a tip on how to make more money. Maybe I'll actually listen to you. She smiled slightly, knowing exactly how to play this game. Emerging markets, she said, her eyes meeting his for the first time. He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What did you say? I said, emerging markets, Charlotte repeated, her voice firm and clear. It's a solid option for diversification, especially in the energy sector. If you want to stay ahead, you'll have to think globally. Sebastian blinked, clearly taken aback. You know about that? He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. Charlotte didn't flinch under his scrutiny. Yes, she replied. I studied finance. But I'm not here to lecture you. I'm here to take your order. The silence between them stretched for a moment. He put down his phone, his eyes narrowing. How do you know about energy markets? I studied international finance at Columbia, she said, her words almost like an afterthought. But I had to drop out to help my family. Doesn't change the fact that the market's still the same. His gaze lingered on her, a flicker of something unfamiliar in his eyes. Why are you still working here? Because life doesn't always go the way we plan it, Charlotte replied, her voice calm, but her words sharp. But you don't need to worry about that. You're here to eat, not to analyze my life. Sebastian leaned back in his chair, a small smile playing on his lips. You've got guts, I'll give you that. He paused, then added, You really know what you're talking about. I didn't expect that from someone who brings my water. Charlotte's smile remained, though her eyes hardened. I'm not just a waitress. The words hung in the air between them, a challenge, a statement. He blinked again, this time with a hint of respect. What's your name? He asked, suddenly curious. Charlotte Reed, she replied, turning to walk away, leaving him with that moment of realization. As she moved across the floor, she could feel his gaze on her. She knew he'd never look at her the same way again. And for the first time that night, she felt like she had the upper hand. Charlotte couldn't shake the feeling that Sebastian Moore was still watching her. She could feel his eyes on her every time she walked past his table, the weight of his gaze both unnerving and strangely flattering. It wasn't like her to care about the opinion of someone like him, a billionaire who probably viewed waitstaff as nothing more than an inconvenience. But there was something about him, something beneath that cold, calculating exterior that intrigued her. As the evening wore on, she focused on her work, moving gracefully between tables, taking orders, delivering food, always with a practiced smile. She couldn't afford distractions, not tonight. The bills were stacking up, and her younger brother, Leo, had another doctor's appointment coming up. She needed to stay sharp. It wasn't until later that evening, when the restaurant was quieter and most of the guests had finished their meals, that she found herself in the kitchen, organizing the stacks of dirty dishes. The bell above the door jingled again, and she glanced up to see Sebastian standing by the hostess stand, talking to the manager. He was alone now, his usual entourage nowhere to be found. She wasn't sure why, but she found herself walking over to his table. "Is everything to your liking, Mr. Moore?" she asked, the words coming out almost mechanically. He looked up at her, his expression unreadable. "You were right earlier," he said, his voice lower than usual. Charlotte raised an eyebrow, not sure if she'd heard him correctly. "About what?" "The investment advice," he said, leaning back in his chair. "I did some digging, and it turns out you were spot on." She kept her face neutral. "I'm glad to hear that. You know," he continued, "I didn't expect someone like you to have that kind of insight." Charlotte could feel her heart rate quicken. She wasn't used to compliments, especially from someone like him. "I told you," she said quietly. "I'm not just a waitress." He smiled, a small, almost genuine smile that made her pause. "What made you drop out of Columbia?" he asked, his voice suddenly softer. It was an odd question, one she hadn't expected from him. She hesitated, not sure if she wanted to answer. "Family," she finally said, her voice steady. "My brother needed help, and I couldn't leave him. So, I put my education on hold." Sebastian studied her for a long moment, as if weighing something in his mind. "I respect that," he said finally. Not everyone would make that choice. There was something in his tone that made her feel like he understood, like he saw her in a way that no one else had. She swallowed the lump in her throat, not sure how to respond. "Is there anything else I can do for you?" she asked, her voice steady once again. "Actually, yes," he said, his eyes meeting hers. "I've been thinking about your advice. I might have a job for you." Charlotte's pulse quickened. "A job?" she repeated, surprised. "Not here," he said quickly, shaking his head. "But something that could use someone with your knowledge. If you're interested, of course." She blinked, not sure she had heard him correctly. "I'm listening," she said, her voice cautious. "How would you like to be part of my investment team?" he asked, his tone almost businesslike. "You're right about the emerging markets. I could use someone like you on my team. Someone who knows the market and isn't afraid to speak up." Charlotte stood there, stunned, not sure what to say. She had never expected anything like this, especially not from someone like Sebastian Moore. She had always dreamed of working in the world of finance, but she never thought it would happen this way. I'm flattered, Mr. Moore, but I don't know if I'm the right person for the job," she stammered, trying to process the offer. "I've only been out of school for a few years, and I'm not looking for a perfect resume," he interrupted, his voice calm but firm. "I'm looking for someone who isn't afraid to think outside the box, someone who has a different perspective." He paused, then added, "You've already proven you can think for yourself. That's what matters." Charlotte felt her heart racing. This was a chance, an opportunity she never thought she'd get. "I'll think about it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Sebastian smiled, a look of approval in his eyes. "Take your time," he said, "but don't wait too long. I think you'll find that you have a lot to offer." As she walked away, she felt the weight of the decision settling on her shoulders. This wasn't just a job offer, it was a turning point. For the first time in a long time, Charlotte felt like she was standing at the edge of something big, something that could change everything. But she also knew that stepping into this new world wouldn't be easy. She would have to prove herself. She would have to show Sebastian and everyone else that she wasn't just a waitress. She was so much more than that. Charlotte's mind raced as she walked home that night. Sebastian Moore's offer echoed in her ears, the words still surreal. It was an opportunity that most people would kill for, an invitation to join a billionaire's investment team, a job in a world she had only ever dreamed of. But she wasn't sure she was ready for it. She had been serving tables just hours ago, and now she was being offered a seat at the table with the world's elite. Was she ready for that kind of leap? The weight of her decision pressed heavily on her shoulders. She didn't want to disappoint anyone, least of all herself. Her thoughts were interrupted by the soft sound of her phone buzzing in her pocket. She pulled it out and saw a text from Leo, her younger brother. "How was work today, sis?" it read. A smile tugged at her lips. Leo always knew how to make her feel like things could be okay, no matter how hard life got. She typed back quickly, "Work was fine. Busy as usual. How was your day?" Seconds later, her phone buzzed again. Same old, same old. Still trying to figure out what to do about that math test. I think I might just take it again next week. Charlotte felt a wave of love and frustration wash over her. Leo was smart, but he struggled in school, and every test felt like the end of the world for him. She knew how much he wanted to succeed, but she also knew how much pressure he was under. She replied, "You'll do fine. Just keep studying. And remember, you've got this." Her phone pinged again. "Thanks, Charlotte. I'll try. Good night." She smiled and put the phone back in her pocket, her thoughts turning back to Sebastian's offer. She knew she couldn't ignore it. This was the break she had been waiting for. But she also knew that if she took this job, everything would change. She would no longer be just Charlotte Reed, the waitress at the Azure Room. She would be someone else, a part of a world that was so far removed from her reality that it felt almost impossible to grasp. The next day, as Charlotte stepped into the bustling kitchen of the Azure Room, her mind was still spinning. She had barely slept, torn between excitement and doubt. She needed to talk to someone. As she set down her apron and got to work, she spotted Mia, one of the other servers. Mia was leaning against the kitchen counter, texting on her phone, and Charlotte hesitated for a moment before walking over to her. "Hey, Mia, can I talk to you for a second?" she asked. Mia looked up and smiled. "Of course, what's up?" Charlotte hesitated, trying to find the right words. "I got an offer last night," she said, her voice low. "An offer for a job. With Sebastian Moore." Mia's eyes widened in surprise. "Sebastian Moore? The billionaire CEO? What kind of offer?" Charlotte took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. "He wants me to join his investment team. He said he was impressed with my knowledge of the markets." "It's crazy, right?" Mia's mouth dropped open. That's huge. What are you going to do?" Charlotte shrugged, unsure. "I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm ready for it. It's all so overwhelming. I've never done anything like this before." Mia gave her a reassuring smile. "Charlotte, you're one of the smartest people I know. You've been hiding that talent for so long. This is your chance to show everyone what you're really capable of." Charlotte met her friend's gaze and saw the sincerity in her eyes. She had always been the one to stay in the background, to keep her head down and do what she had to do. But maybe it was time to step out of the shadows. Maybe it was time to take a chance on herself. "You really think I can do this?" Charlotte asked, her voice filled with doubt. Mia nodded. "I know you can. You've been underestimated your whole life. It's time to prove them all wrong." Charlotte felt a spark of determination light up inside her. Maybe Mia was right. Maybe it was time to stop hiding and start living the life she had always dreamed of. With a deep breath, she looked at Mia and said, "I'm going to do it. I'm going to take the job." Mia's smile widened. "That's the spirit. Go for it, Charlotte. You've got this." As Charlotte went about her day, she felt a newfound sense of purpose. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was ready to face it. She had made her decision, and now there was no turning back. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was a woman with a future, and nothing was going to stand in her way. Charlotte stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of her blouse for the third time. Her reflection stared back at her, someone she barely recognized. The woman who had once been a waitress, someone who had lived paycheck to paycheck, now stared back at her in a crisp, white blouse, with a sense of purpose that felt both foreign and exciting. It had only been 2 weeks since she had made the decision to take Sebastian Moore's offer, but already, it felt like an entirely different world. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Leo. "Big test today. Wish me luck," she read. A wave of pride washed over her. Leo was always looking for ways to better himself, and despite everything they had been through, he never gave up. She quickly typed a reply. "You've got this. I believe in you." She slid the phone back into her pocket, then took a deep breath. This was her first official day as part of Moore Enterprises' investment team. The idea of walking into the sleek, modern office building made her heart race. She had never imagined she would work in a place like this, with its polished marble floors and glass walls, everything so precise and orderly. It was a far cry from the chaos of her past, but she knew she belonged here. The elevator doors slid open, and Charlotte stepped inside, feeling the weight of the decision she had made. As she pressed the button for the top floor, she found herself wondering what it would be like to sit in meetings with executives, to have a say in major decisions, to be a part of something that had nothing to do with her old life. The elevator dinged softly as it reached her floor. The moment the doors opened, she was greeted by a stunning view of the city. She had seen this kind of office in movies, but now she was standing in it, ready to begin a new chapter. She walked toward the receptionist's desk, her heels clicking softly on the polished floor. "Good morning. I'm Charlotte Reed. I'm here for my first day," she said, her voice steady, though her nerves still lingered. The receptionist smiled warmly. "Of course, Miss Reed. Mr. Moore has been expecting you. Please follow me." As they walked down the hallway, Charlotte couldn't help but feel a little out of place. Everything about this world seemed so foreign to her. But as she glanced around, she reminded herself that she had earned this. She had fought for this, and now she was here, ready to prove that she could thrive in this new environment. They reached the conference room, and the receptionist opened the door for her. Inside, Sebastian Moore was standing by the window, looking out at the city below. He turned as she entered, his expression unreadable. "Charlotte," he greeted, his voice calm but with a hint of approval. "I'm glad you could join us." Charlotte smiled, trying to quell the nervous energy swirling inside her. "Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Moore. I'm excited to get started." He nodded and gestured for her to sit at the table. The other members of the team were already seated, their eyes briefly meeting hers before returning to their notes. Charlotte took a seat, trying to steady her breath. She knew the eyes were on her. She could feel the weight of their expectations, the challenge that lay ahead. As the meeting began, Sebastian outlined the company's upcoming projects and the role she would play in analyzing investment opportunities. It was everything she had studied: market trends, data analysis, portfolio strategies. But now it was real. This wasn't just homework anymore. These decisions would have consequences. As the discussion continued, Charlotte felt her confidence grow. She had learned more than she had ever expected to in such a short time. She was starting to get the hang of things, understanding the language, the pacing, the flow of these high-stakes conversations. When it was her turn to speak, her voice was calm and clear as she presented her analysis of an emerging market opportunity. The room went silent as she spoke, the usual chatter giving way to the sound of her words. When she finished, Sebastian looked at her with a nod of approval. "Well done, Charlotte," he said, his tone almost appreciative. Charlotte could hardly believe it. She had done it. She had proven herself. As the meeting wrapped up and the others filed out, Sebastian remained seated, his gaze on her. "You've got a good head on your shoulders, Charlotte," he said. "I think you're going to do very well here." A smile tugged at her lips. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was part of something bigger. And that was only the beginning. Charlotte walked into the office the following Monday with a renewed sense of confidence. The first week had been challenging, but she had made it through. She had proven herself in those early meetings, and now, things were beginning to fall into place. The rhythm of the office was starting to make sense, and as she settled into her role on Sebastian's investment team, she could feel herself becoming more comfortable in this new world. She was no longer the shy waitress. She was now part of a fast-paced, high-stakes environment where her decisions mattered. As the days passed, Charlotte's understanding of the markets grew deeper. She was not just making recommendations based on theory anymore. She was tracking investments, analyzing market shifts, and contributing to discussions that could make or break deals. Each new piece of information, each meeting she attended, built her confidence and solidified her belief that this was where she belonged. But there were moments, quiet moments, when she still caught herself wondering if she truly belonged here. She was still new to this world, still learning, still proving herself. One afternoon, as she sat at her desk, reviewing a detailed report on a potential international investment, her phone buzzed. It was a text from Leo. "I made the soccer team," it read. Charlotte's heart swelled with pride. She quickly typed back, "That's amazing, Leo. I knew you could do it." For a moment, she let herself be consumed by the simple joy of her brother's success. He had always been her motivation to keep pushing forward, to make sure she could give him the life she had always wanted for him. But then, the reality of her current life set in again. She looked around the office, at the polished desks, the high-end technology, the sharp suits. It was all so different from her past. Sometimes, it felt like she had stepped into someone else's world. She had worked hard to get here, but she still wondered if she was truly ready for the level of responsibility she was now facing. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching her desk. She looked up to see Sebastian standing in front of her, his usual composed expression softened by a hint of something more. "Charlotte, do you have a moment?" he asked, his tone polite but firm. "Of course, Mr. Moore," she replied, pushing aside the nagging doubts. She followed him into his office, where he gestured for her to sit. "I wanted to talk to you about your recent analysis," he said, his gaze thoughtful. "The report you submitted last week on the Asian market opportunities. It was impressive. Your approach was fresh and insightful." Charlotte blinked, surprised. "Thank you, sir," she said, her voice steady, though a flicker of uncertainty still lingered. "I wasn't sure if I was on the right track." Sebastian leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving her face. "You're more than on the right track, Charlotte," he said, his voice carrying a rare warmth. "You've got something others here don't. A different perspective. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm impressed with your progress." Charlotte felt a rush of pride, the validation she had been seeking since she first walked into this building. Sebastian Moore, the man who had once offered her a chance at this new life, was telling her she was doing well. It meant more than she could put into words. "Thank you, Mr. Moore," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I appreciate the feedback." He smiled, his usual aloofness slipping away for just a moment. "You're doing great, Charlotte. Don't second-guess yourself. Trust your instincts." As she left his office, her mind was buzzing with excitement. She had done it. She had earned his respect. But there was still so much more to prove. She wasn't just a newcomer in this world. She was becoming a part of it. And she would keep fighting to ensure that she not only belonged, but thrived. The rest of the day flew by in a blur of meetings and reports, each one another step in the journey she had started. But as the office began to empty out and Charlotte gathered her things, she paused for a moment. She looked out over the city from the office window. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm glow over the skyline. She had come so far from where she had started, and though the road ahead was uncertain, she was no longer afraid. This was her life now, full of challenges, yes, but also full of potential. And she was ready to meet whatever came next. Charlotte woke up the next morning with a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in a long time. The weight of her new job at Moore Enterprises felt more like a responsibility she was ready for, rather than something that might crush her under its pressure. As she prepared for another day in the office, she reflected on the past few weeks. Every meeting, every report, every conversation with her colleagues felt like a step forward. She wasn't just learning the ropes anymore. She was starting to lead discussions, make decisions, and, most importantly, contribute to something bigger than herself. By now, she had grown used to the fast pace of the office and the high expectations. Sebastian had been right. Her perspective was different, and it was making a difference. As she entered the office, she was met by the usual hustle and bustle. People were already hard at work, some on the phone, others tapping away at their computers, the office filled with the quiet hum of productivity. Charlotte walked to her desk, her eyes scanning the reports from the day before. She was just about to sit down when she heard a voice behind her. "Charlotte, good to see you. Can I have a moment?" She turned to see Sebastian standing there, his usual composed demeanor in place. "Of course, Mr. Moore," she said, standing up quickly. "Please, come in." Sebastian stepped into her office and closed the door behind him. "I wanted to talk to you about something important," he said, his tone more serious than usual. Charlotte felt her heart skip a beat. Was something wrong? Had she made a mistake? "What's going on?" she asked, her voice steady, but her nerves beginning to rise. "You've been doing excellent work, Charlotte," he said, pausing for a moment before continuing. "But I need you to take on more responsibility. We're working on a major deal, and I want you to lead the analysis for it." Charlotte blinked, surprised. She had been contributing, but leading a major deal? She had never imagined that she would be asked to take on such a significant role so soon. "Are you sure I'm ready for that?" she asked, her voice tinged with doubt. "You've more than proven yourself," Sebastian said, his eyes meeting hers with an unwavering confidence. "This is your chance to show what you're really capable of. I trust you, Charlotte." The words hit her harder than she expected. Sebastian trusted her. He was giving her an opportunity to step up and take charge of something important. She had worked for this moment, but now that it was here, the reality of it settled in. The weight of the responsibility felt heavy, but at the same time, she was filled with a sense of purpose she had never known before. She had always been the one in the background, the quiet observer, but now she was being asked to lead. "Thank you for the opportunity," she said, her voice more confident than she felt. "I won't let you down." "I know you won't," Sebastian replied with a small smile. "I'll have the team provide you with all the necessary information. You're in charge of this from here on out." As he left her office, Charlotte sat back down at her desk, her mind racing. She was no longer just a part of the team. She was now a leader in her own right. She knew the next few weeks would be a test, but she was ready. She had spent her whole life feeling like she wasn't enough, like she wasn't capable of more. But now, she had a chance to prove everyone wrong. She wasn't just the waitress who had been given a shot. She was Charlotte Reed, and she was ready to take on the world. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Charlotte pored over the data, worked with her team, and prepared for the upcoming meeting. She could feel the weight of her new role, but she also felt something else, a surge of excitement, a sense of belonging. This was her moment, and she wasn't going to waste it. That evening, as she walked home, the weight of the day began to settle on her shoulders. It wasn't just about the deal or the job anymore. It was about who she had become in the process. She had come so far from the shy waitress she once was, but this was only the beginning. She had more to prove, more to achieve, and she was ready to face whatever came next. As she entered her apartment, her phone buzzed again. It was another message from Leo. "Guess what? I got an A on that test. I told you I could do it." Charlotte smiled, a sense of pride swelling in her chest. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. She wasn't just changing her own life. She was changing the lives of the people she loved too. And nothing could stop her now. Charlotte's heart raced as she walked into the conference room. The pressure was mounting, but this time, it was different. She was no longer the newcomer, the uncertain girl who had walked in through these doors just a few months ago. She had earned her place here, and today, she was about to lead a major presentation. As she stood before the team, the familiar faces of the other executives stared back at her, their expressions neutral but expectant. Sebastian stood off to the side, watching her closely, his usual aloofness replaced by a rare look of confidence in her abilities. Charlotte adjusted her notes, took a deep breath, and began. "Good morning, everyone. Today, we're going to analyze the next big investment opportunity in the renewable energy sector." Her voice was steady, her words clear. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, studying market trends, compiling data, and running simulations. This wasn't just a presentation. It was her chance to prove to everyone, and to herself, that she was ready for this role. As she walked them through the slides, outlining potential risks and rewards, she could see their eyes on her, focused and attentive. For the first time, the doubts that had once plagued her, the fear of being judged, of not measuring up, faded away. She wasn't just talking about numbers. She was speaking with authority, with the expertise she had worked so hard to develop. As she reached the final slide, she paused for a moment, letting the silence settle in the room. "In conclusion," she said, looking around the table, "I believe this opportunity aligns perfectly with our long-term goals. The potential returns are significant, and with the right strategic partnerships, we could position ourselves as leaders in this market." The room was quiet for a moment. Charlotte held her breath, waiting for the feedback. Then, one by one, the executives began to speak, nodding in agreement, offering their support. Sebastian remained silent, his expression unreadable, but Charlotte could feel the weight of his gaze, steady and approving. When the meeting ended, she was surprised to find that she wasn't exhausted. Instead, she felt invigorated, energized by the way the team had responded to her ideas. She had done it. She had led the meeting, and she had done it on her own terms. As the team filed out of the room, Sebastian approached her. "Well done, Charlotte," he said, his voice low but sincere. "You've earned my trust." Charlotte felt a rush of pride, but she kept her composure. "Thank you, Mr. Moore," she replied. "I couldn't have done it without the team's support." He gave her a small, approving smile. "You're ready for more. I'll be in touch." As he left the room, Charlotte stood there for a moment, taking in the weight of his words. She was no longer just a part of the team. She was an integral part of the company's future. That night, as she walked home, she replayed the events of the day in her mind. For the first time, she felt truly at peace with where she was. She had worked hard to get here, and now, she was ready for whatever came next. But even as she basked in the accomplishment of the day, she knew that this was just the beginning. There would be more challenges, more decisions to make, more opportunities to seize. And she was ready for them all. Charlotte walked into the office with a quiet determination. The past few months had been a whirlwind of challenges, meetings, and growing responsibilities, but today felt different. She had proven herself time and time again, but now she was being entrusted with an even bigger task. It wasn't just about analyzing markets anymore. It was about shaping the direction of the company. As she sat at her desk, she looked over the details of the new project she had been assigned to lead. This deal could be a game changer for more enterprises, and she was at the helm. Her phone buzzed, and she quickly picked it up to see a text from Leo. "How did your big meeting go?" it read. A smile tugged at her lips as she typed back. "It went great. I think I'm starting to figure this all out." She paused before hitting send, thinking about how much had changed since she had first taken this job. A year ago, she would never have imagined being in this position, working alongside some of the most powerful people in the industry. But now, she was one of them. The day passed in a blur of conference calls, strategy sessions, and presentations. As the clock ticked closer to 5 p.m., Charlotte found herself in the boardroom with Sebastian and the other key players in the deal. This was it, her moment to show that she could take this to the next level. She had spent days preparing for this meeting, reviewing every angle, every potential risk, and every opportunity. The room was filled with anticipation as she stood up to present. "Our analysis shows that this partnership is not only viable, but can yield substantial returns over the next 5 years, she said, her voice steady and confident. "By leveraging our existing resources and combining them with the potential of this new venture, we can position ourselves as leaders in the industry." As she spoke, Charlotte felt the eyes of the room on her, but this time, it didn't make her nervous. She was no longer just the girl from the back of the room. She was the one with the answers, the one they were all listening to. When she finished her presentation, there was a moment of silence. Sebastian, who had been unusually quiet throughout the meeting, finally spoke. "Excellent work, Charlotte," he said, his voice carrying an unexpected warmth. "Your insight into this deal is impressive. You've exceeded my expectations." Charlotte felt a wave of pride wash over her, but she kept her composure. "Thank you, Mr. Moore," she said, nodding. The rest of the room echoed their approval, and Charlotte knew she had done it. She had taken the reins, and the deal was moving forward. As the meeting adjourned, Sebastian called her into his office. "Come in, Charlotte," he said, motioning for her to sit. "You've really stepped up today. I'm impressed." Charlotte smiled, grateful for his praise but trying to stay grounded. "Thank you. I've worked hard for this opportunity." Sebastian studied her for a moment, then leaned back in his chair. "I know you have," he said, his tone shifting to something more serious. "Which is why I want you to take the lead on the next phase of this project. I'm giving you more responsibility. You're ready for it." The words hit her like a wave. More responsibility? She had already come so far, and now she was being asked to do even more. But as she looked into Sebastian's eyes, she knew there was no turning back. She had earned this. "I won't let you down," she said, her voice firm. Sebastian gave her a small smile. "I know you won't. Now go make it happen." As she left his office, Charlotte couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. This was it. She had officially arrived. The road ahead would be challenging, but she was ready for it. She had fought her way to this point, and now nothing would stop her. As she walked out of the building that evening, the sun setting behind the city's skyline, she realized that this was just the beginning. She wasn't just part of the team anymore. She was leading the way. And for the first time, she felt truly unstoppable. The weeks that followed were a blur of activity, as Charlotte threw herself into her new role with the same dedication and drive that had gotten her to this point. The project she was leading had gained momentum, and the stakes were higher than ever. Every decision she made felt weighty, but with each passing day, she grew more confident in her abilities. She was no longer the girl who had walked into more enterprises as an outsider. She was now a key player in the company's success. One afternoon, as she sat at her desk reviewing a final proposal for the project, her phone buzzed with a message from Leo. "Guess what? I got a scholarship," it read. A wave of pride washed over Charlotte as she typed back. "That's incredible, Leo. I'm so proud of you." She paused for a moment, allowing herself to feel the full weight of her brother's success. Leo's future was no longer uncertain, and it was because of the choices she had made. choices that had set the foundation for a better life for both of them. As she continued to work, Charlotte's thoughts shifted back to the deal. This was the final phase. The risk was high, but the potential reward was even greater. She had spent countless hours analyzing data, strategizing, and discussing with her team. The pressure was mounting, but she was ready. She had prepared for this. As the day of the final presentation arrived, Charlotte found herself standing before the board once again. This time, there was no hesitation, no second-guessing. She had a plan, and she was going to present it with the confidence she had built over the past months. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice steady as she addressed the room. "Today, we are presented with an opportunity that will shape the future of our company. The risks are real, but the rewards are unprecedented. This is a chance to position ourselves as leaders in the renewable energy sector." As she spoke, Charlotte felt the eyes of the room on her, but she no longer felt nervous. She was in control, and she knew this was her moment to prove that she belonged here. She walked them through her proposal, answering questions with ease and offering solutions to every concern. The room was silent as she finished her presentation, and Charlotte took a deep breath, waiting for the feedback. Sebastian, who had been quietly observing throughout, leaned forward slightly, his gaze fixed on her. "Excellent work, Charlotte," he said, his voice calm but full of approval. "You've shown not only your expertise, but also your leadership. This deal is moving forward." Charlotte felt a rush of triumph. It wasn't just the approval from the board that mattered. It was the realization that she had earned this. She had fought for this. And now, she was seeing the results of her hard work. As the meeting concluded, Charlotte walked out of the room with a sense of accomplishment that she had never experienced before. She was no longer just a part of the team. She was leading it. The following weeks were a whirlwind of finalizing the deal, coordinating with partners, and executing the plan she had put in motion. And with each success, Charlotte knew she was one step closer to realizing her full potential. She wasn't just the waitress who had stumbled into this world by chance. She was now a force to be reckoned with, a leader, a decision-maker, and someone who had built her own future from the ground up. As she walked out of the office late one evening, the city lights twinkling in the distance, Charlotte looked out at the skyline, a sense of pride welling up inside her. She had done it. She had proven that she could thrive in this world, and she had no intention of stopping now. The road ahead was filled with even greater challenges, but Charlotte was ready for them. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living, leading, and creating a future that was all her own.